What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by rock band Third Eye Blind. Basically, this album came out in the spring of 1997 and it went like 6 times platinum. It was a big deal back in the late 90s and stuff. Definitely had a lot of 90s makeshift kind of malaise and such. Definitely had a lot of makeshift 90s malaise and that type of stuff. I would definitely say it's pretty similar to Marcy Playground, a little bit similar to Tonic and Offspring, just not quite as peppy as Offspring, just some of that type of stuff. This is a very sleepy album. Apart from like one or two singles, most of the stuff is just kind of like dreary, kind of taken aback, this kind of swash, late day kind of malaise and that type of stuff. It's definitely a makeshift album, but it's very sleep induced. It almost feels like you've taken like a bunch of sleeping pills, something like that. Just something within that context as far as kind of saying and such. It's just a very malaised album, and I do like this album, but I do think it could. I now, I do like this album, but I do think it could have used a couple more jolts of energy as far as trying to spruce up this project. Because I mean, apart from Semi Charmed Life, Graduate, and losing a whole year, I feel like for the most part, this album is pretty just lackadaisical and pretty like not necessarily sullen, but just kind of drowsy. I think that's just kind of the concept about it. It's a very dreary album. And now that I think about it, I can't think of a ton of albums that really took this approach. This is just very sleep-induced music, and I look at the concept of it. It just really feels like it's just permanently like 5:30 p.m. in the winter or 6:45, 7:30 p.m. in the summer, something like that. It's a very kind of evening tone, twilight, dusky kind of feel towards it. Just has that perfect kind of vestige. But the problem with it is just the fact that not all of these songs have some degree of excitement. They just kind of have more of the feeling of this work was a bitch today, go home, go to sleep, more so than go out and step out and have some fun about it and kind of change that and rectify it. It just kind of has a more, I don't want to say self-defeated, but just kind of more like submissive kind of approach towards like the concept of like malaise and that type of stuff as far as makeshift kind of goes. But I do think this album does have some quality on it, and it definitely did have some quality singles. I mean, I wound up liking like at least 4 out of 5 of them. So I definitely feel like the singles hit. There's 3 top 10 singles. So this was a pop rock smash, not just on the rock charts, but also on regular Billboard 100 radio as far as that kind of goes. So we'll go ahead and get into some of these. We'll be able to talk about it, and you'll see the smash success of this project and the affluence of how it went, and just the dissection of it, and just in terms of how the quality kind of went. So the first single was Semi Charmed Life, and chances are, if you've been cognizant to radio, especially pop rock radio or rhythmic radio or something like that, you probably heard this song. This was one of the largest songs in 1997. Definitely stuck throughout that year and at least the first few years of the 2000s, 98, 99, 2000, 2001. Just a constant hit. It was just a song that was consistently played. Just had that real infectious kind of hook, and it's just a summary kind of pop rock tune. It's great for just got off work. Definitely has that kind of feeling of just a little bit of a pep. Just that song that you listen to when it's like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock p.m. Just got off work, something like that, or even out of school if you're a student, something in that context. Just kind of has the great just got done feelings, and it just has some mid excitement. I mean, it's not quite a party tune, but it does kind of mildly have that pep of kind of saying, hey, maybe I'll do something tonight, but if not, oh well, I'm still excited that I'm done. That kind of concept about it. It's just kind of a nice summary mid pep kind of song that just has that great energy, and it continues to be a highlight. I mean, I really feel like the chorus is pretty infectious about it. It's just an overall nice one, but there's just not many songs like this on the album. I just kind of think, I mean, this is kind of, I don't want to say they're a one-hit wonder because they did get 3 top 10 singles, but this is kind of the concept that this is one of the ones that's gone back to the most just because of its sheer kind of just out of nowhere kind of like peppy kind of optimism and that type of stuff. So I just would have to say it's a nice one. Now the second single was the only single out of the 5 I didn't enjoy that much, and it's called Graduate. I don't recommend this song. Basically, this is kind of out of character for Third Eye Blind. I kind of look after it, and it's a more up tempo kind of song, and this is supposed to be like kind of a mid party kind of number, but they just don't pull it off that well. I kind of feel like the riff was just kind of not as catchy. And I think maybe like these up tempo songs, like I definitely feel like they have pop rock malaise down. I definitely feel like they have these down tempo kind of hazy songs down too. But in terms of like trying to get like the stuff riveting and create like mini mosh pits and just festive dancing and that type of stuff and just overall kind of party vibes, it just felt like they were kind of slack on this particular album. I just didn't see it. Wasn't a convincing party tune. And the song is not actually about graduating. It's about the concept of just kind of being a little bit more like defiant towards it and that kind of concept. But I just look after it. It just didn't quite conceptualize to me as far as like being, it just didn't have like the correct energy. Maybe the riffs just weren't entirely as connecting as they needed to be, but I just didn't see the aspect of like it quite being as compelling. So this is about the only one out of the singles that I just didn't connect with wholesomely. But the third single, How's It Gonna Be, is a real nice one. This is another top 10 tune, but this is kind of like really similar to like the kind of malaise that Marcy Playground did with Sex and Candy and some of those type songs. This is just a hazy, late summer kind of makeshift malaise kind of tune. Definitely just really feels lambent. Doesn't have like any sort of, it's very much a low mid tempo kind of pep. It's not down tempo entirely, but it does just kind of have like a more relaxed feel towards it. It's just a great blue collar day to day kind of tune. This is definitely one that, this is another one that you probably heard, maybe not as often as Semi Charmed Life, but I definitely feel like in rhythmic pop rock radio, maybe it's one that you'll catch like once or twice a month, or three or four or five times a season, something like that. It's just a nice one. It has a nice after effect as far as that kind of goes, but I just look after it. It has pretty great hook. I definitely feel like the hook is pretty outstanding. It keeps up with Semi Charmed Life. It's just a lot more malaised and a lot more kind of like sprawling in terms of like it's not necessarily anguish, but just kind of the malaise of how it goes about it. It's just very much a makeshift kind of tune that this is about this like standard kind of commute and that sort of thing. But it's just a nice hazy late day, definitely 4:30, not quite as peppy as Semi Charmed Life, but just kind of more 5:36, something like that. Just kind of this kind of debating whether you're going to go out or you're gonna. I mean, in this song, it kind of feels like you're just gonna go home, and that's just kind of it. It's not so much of one that kind of has like the pep of getting ready to do something, but it is a nice song. Definitely highlight, definite highlight, definite hot track. Losing a Whole Year is the fourth single. Now, this is a single like Graduate that didn't crack the top 10, but it's definitely a nice one. This charted on the rock charts. It's a real kind of, I feel like this is a peppy song. This is very similar to Semi Charmed Life. It just has a little bit more energy. This one's not quite as makeshift and has as much kind of like day commute and evening commute feeling towards it. It's definitely some nice evening excitement. Really like the riff on this one. This has like a nice kind of pep towards it, and it just has for some has nice evening excitement and kind of good peppiness just in terms of actual some recreation, that sort of situation. Just good for some late day activities. Maybe you're getting ready to step out to a venue, something like that, go out and buy some beer or something in that context. Yeah, the riffs on Losing a Whole Year just kind of, I mean, they do have like an evening feel. They're not quite riveting to the point where you want to headbang and stuff, but they do have like a nice kind of just hazy kind of just really want to get, they just give some excitement as far as wanting to step out. It just kind of has that kind of riveting kind of energy. So yeah, that's about the peppiness of the singles. Those kind of two, Semi Charmed Life and Losing the Whole Year, are the ones with the most pep. But then Jumper's the fifth single. And this one is kind of a pop rock tune. This one's not really so much about the pep and recreation stuff. This one is a song with a message about trying to hope that folks will not commit suicide in some of those type contexts as far as being hurtful and just kind of like, just not being happy and that sort of depressive kind of feelings and that sort of concept. It's a bonding song. I definitely look at the concept. It doesn't just have to be for suicidal aspects. It can also just be for like buddies and women who are glum in some of those type contexts as far as being able to say, hey, I wish that you weren't quite as dreary and quite as sullen all the time, that type of stuff. Just a nice one for that sort of concept. This is a popular song, cracked the top 10 on the Billboard 100 Definite, was a continued circulated hit throughout the late 90s. Doesn't quite have the pep of Semi Charmed Life. It's peppier than How's It Going to Be, but with it having a message, it's not really a song that you just are going to go out and buy like a 12 pack of beer or go out and get crunk to or go out on a date, that type of stuff. It just, I mean, it's just kind of more browsy about like the kind of emotions about it, where it just kind of has a little bit more stuff to say, more so than just the frivolity of most of these songs on here. So it's just kind of a concept about it. But I think just within the context, it can be a nice kind of breezy tune to listen to in the summer. I mean, the production is very breezy on here. It's just nice pop, makeshift sludge, that sort of concept. This has just kind of that kind of, it continues to have, it's not, this one's not so much malaise as much as it is just kind of sludge, just kind of the concept of just hearing it. I mean, it's a somewhat dreary song, definitely continues some of that concept, but this one's probably one of the more pop centric ones, kind of like Semi Charmed Life, where these are just the two like peppier ones, despite the fact that the song has a message. So it's this kind of thing about it. But I do like this song. It just depends upon where you would listen to it. I mean, this song probably wouldn't be ideal and be very congenial for a Friday or Saturday night when you're getting ready to go out, but it does kind of have like this that standard Wednesday afternoon kind of feel, just some random bluesy kind of lackadaisicalness. You know, maybe someone had a bad day at work and you're just like, hey, cheer up. You know, it's that sort of concept. This kind of has that thing. But those are the 5 singles. So me liking 4 out of 5 of them. Just to kind of say, I feel like my 2 favorites out of these would definitely be Semi Charmed Life and then Losing a Whole Year. Those have the most riveting kind of energy and the most kind of energized kind of rambunctiousness. And then How's It Gonna Be is just kind of like that lazy kind of hazy summery day kind of tune. But I do like that one too. So it's just kind of good. And Jumper is just good for like bonding and kind of midday kind of pep. So talk about the rest of this album. Out of 14 songs, there were 7 I recommend. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend those 7 songs. So they would be Semi Charmed Life, How's It Going to Be, Losing a Whole Year, Jumper, Thanks a Lot, The Background, and I Want You. So basically, I Want You is a pretty romantic song. This is definitely a deeper, kind of blousy kind of song. Very dreary, still has that malaise about it like most of this album does, but it's just kind of in a more romantic sense. Definitely kind of one of the more like songs for ladies on this album. I definitely feel like this one's just a little bit more emphasis on the romance. More, I kind of felt like Jumper could be one of those, and Semi Charmed Life is just kind of like the nonchalant pep of romance. But I kind of look at this one as just kind of more intimate of a song. Definite highlight. I like the kind of dreary kind of malaise of this song. This is how that works, and kind of where this album's very sleepy, but still Third Eye Blind, despite their sleepiness, manages to put out a kind of intimate and nice romantic kind of song. So that's a nice one. The Background is a highlight. This is probably one of the most sluggish riffs on here. Just really kind of sleepy and dreary. This one feels like a late winding down song. Not just 5:36, but like 9:30, 10 if you're at work until that point, till 9:30, 10 p.m., something like that, or later. Or most of the stores are kind of shutting down, minus like the 24-hour stores and like the gas stations, where it's just kind of, it's still a makeshift song, but maybe you're just getting like some night goodies. I would just look after it, just picking up like, picking up like some Chex Mix or some powdered donuts, something like that, getting like a Pepsi, something like that. Just some of those type moments. I mean, the song, the emphasis behind it just makes it feel like it's just kind of like work was a bitch. It's just very bewildering. I'm just going home and going to sleep. I just look after it. It's just kind of, or I think you could have some pep towards it as far as just trying to get like some night goodies and just kind of have like, maybe it is a winding down song, but I definitely see it as just like, just don't be so submissive in the context of saying it's definite makeshift. I wouldn't just be quite so self-defeated about it, but it is a nice one. It's definitely good for that sort of thing as far as that just being a real kind of sleepy and just relatively dreary song. I mean, Narcolepsy is kind of like that. God of Wine is like that. Motorcycle Drive-By is like that. There's just a lot of songs that really have some of these incredibly sleepy kind of feels. But and then the other highlight I recommend that's not a single is Thanks a Lot. This one's really kind of like a peppy kind of, Thanks a Lot is a pub night venue crawl kind of song. Definitely decent little night out. It just kind of feels to me like some evening pep. Not quite as crazy as like a dance club song, something with a lot of riff and headbanging kind of energy, mosh pit type stuff, just in terms of like the standard Friday, Saturday night craziness. But this may be like a Wednesday or Thursday night. Maybe you're going to go out for 2 or 3 drinks, something like that. Talk to some folks at the bar, that sort of situation as far as that kind of goes. It just kind of feels like a pub kind of crawl kind of night, or just like a standard like night venue, just something typical, maybe even a coffee shop, something like that. Just kind of pretty much lackadaisical kind of energy as far as that kind of goes. But it is probably one of the more rousing songs on here. I feel like this song and Losing a Whole Year are probably the songs with the most pep, where Third Eye Blind actually pulls it off. So there's just not many songs like this. Semi Charmed Life is a peppy song, but it just is not like kind of a crunchy, kind of getting crunk, kind of stepping out kind of song. But I just look after it. I mean, Third Eye Blind is very light, unlike the Friday night kind of songs. This is really not much of a weekend album. I just would have to say, it's not to say that that's a horribly bad thing, but you just notice about it that's more kind of in the day-to-day context and maybe the occasional stepping out. But for the most part, like songs like The Background, Motorcycle Drive-By, and God of Wine, and some of these, it just very much is a very sleepy and just kind of drowsy, work sucks kind of attitude for the most part. That just kind of happens to be a thing. But to talk about some of the songs that I didn't enjoy, like, yeah, to talk about some of these, like Motorcycle Drive-By and God of Wine, are really kind of sleepy, and their tempo is just more kind of sluggish than I would have wanted. Just definitely didn't connect as much with it. I feel like London was kind of a peppy song that was just like Graduate, where it just didn't quite work as well for me as far as that kind of went. Like I said, I feel like the up-tempo songs for Third Eye Blind probably use some just more cagey and kind of, or just more kind of riveting riffs, and a lot more energized ones, like take some pages out of Metallica's playbook and Korn's playbook and Limp Bizkit, Kid Rock, some of those type folks, maybe something in that context. And just some of that. I just feel like the up-tempo songs, and that says something when the up-tempo songs are the ones that you're complaining about. That's kind of an awkward gesture, just because for the most part, I usually complain about the sluggish songs kind of being the ones that are not quite as hip. But I feel like this time it's the songs like Graduate and London that kind of have more of the problem, that more so than that. That's just kind of the thing. But Burning Man, I didn't really like the pace of this one. This one just kind of had like an awkward pace in terms of the vocals and the production on here. This was just kind of a real awkward song, and just kind of was off-putting just in terms of the approach of how it went. So I didn't enjoy that one. And then Narcolepsy was kind of like another sleep-induced one that was kind of weird to kind of kick this album off, or this is the second song you hear just that immediately, where it just dives into like these sleepy kind of songs. But I just kind of felt like, I mean, I'm glad that Third Eye Blind has like this malaise down of just like this after work kind of winding down kind of energy. But I think there were just maybe a few more. I think maybe that there just were a few too many of these songs on here in terms of that concept. Maybe we could have used like something like, I definitely think this album could have used another song like uh, Losing a Whole Year. I definitely think that to me is one of the best songs on this album. I just think that kind of like malaise, kind of dreary, but still kind of peppy kind of energy was definitely needed. And then Semi Charmed Life was another one that could have been needed a bunch too. I just think that kind of off the wall, random peppiness was just kind of surprising and balmy, and definitely in a lot of ways. Definitely could have used something more like that, just another hook like that, and another just random kind of fun kind of song. So Losing a Whole Year and Semi Charmed Life are some ideal ones that could have been used for like further recipes and that type of stuff. But yeah, I just would have to say that there's just some real kind of sluggish ones on here. Good for You was just kind of one that was another kind of sleep induced one that was kind of one of the more ones that I would have almost picked, but I feel like maybe there just were too many of these completely dreary kind of down tempo songs that maybe we could have just used another one with some pep. I just feel like Motorcycle Drive-By, God of Wine, Narcolepsy, Good for You. All of these are just very kind of sluggish, and it just kind of, I mean, some of them hit, but it's just not quite as often. Like, I feel like How's It Going to Be hits. I feel like How's It Gonna Be hits, The Background hits, I Want You hits, but it's kind of like where I feel like Third Eye Blind has this halfway down, maybe 65% down in terms of the down tempo sluggishness, but it's not quite as down pat, and it just kind of results in like a patchy album. So I'm gonna give this album me liking 7 songs out of 14. I'm gonna give this album like a 5.5 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty good. Just a little bit above average in terms of middle of the road, not by much, but enough to be able to say that it's more than average, but just kind of in a mild highlight beyond that. It did get to 6 tons platinum, so that's worth saying something, but I only liked 4 out of 5 of the singles, but 5.5 out of 10 is pretty solid. The social score, though, I'll go ahead and give the social score like a 6 out of 10. I feel like that's decent enough. There are some good tunes on here, but in terms of some of these that I would recommend, like maybe Jumper can work some of the time. Semi Charmed Life is definitely a good one. Losing a Whole Year is a great one. Thanks a Lot's a pretty nice one. And like I Want You works for the ladies, but I just would kind of have to say that there's just not an overabundance of kind of like songs for stepping out. I mean, I feel like these are at least good, and these singles definitely work. I mean, there's a lot of these that I think folks have probably heard, but it's just not an overall kind of connecting kind of album. This just really feels like day to day kind of makeshift of just kind of the standard commute and that sort of thing. And it works in some senses, but not all of them. So that's this kind of thing. But in terms of the future, I think Third Eye Blind has, I don't know how many albums they've dropped since then. I know that the 1997 to 99 albums were their prime years. I definitely want to review their 1999 album. That one didn't go 6 times platinum, it only went platinum. So we're going to have to see about some more of these, but this is like a decent little jaunt here.